Hi, my name's Len. This is my channel, The Tree of Life. Today I decided to come out here on a nice spring day at my local park and chat with whoever is watching this right now, and I hope you get something out of it. I hope the sound quality's good. I hope the video's good. I'm using my phone for this one. Didn't want to bring a bunch of gear. And shout out to Jeff. Yeah, I'm still playing around with that camera, man. I'm just afraid of how old it's gonna make me look. So last time, part one, I kind of started with the Big Bang. And that was kind of how I look at that is that's like a white hole. It's like a wormhole, we have a black hole and then we end up with the white hole end of it. And I'm going to be speaking on that. So part two, we're going to look at holographic theory or the holographic principle. I have made some notes, but I'm just trying to stream this out of the old noggin, so please bear with me. I'm not always going to look at the camera because I'm deep in thought trying to pull this out of my feeble brain. I guess I will start with this. I'll throw some names out. The first one would be Leonard Susskind, and he is was a professor of theoretical physics at Stanford University. I'm not sure he still is because he's getting up there in years. One of his associates was Juan Maldacena, if I've pronounced that correctly. I can't even speak, much less pronounce things. So forgive me if I trip over my tongue. Okay, so the next name I will throw out there is David Bohm. He was another guy that was into physics and holographic reality. Also probably spent some time helping us to produce and invent nuclear weapons. Not so good, right? And then the third guy I will mention is Karl Pribram, and he was a clinical psychiatrist. He was also head of a psychiatric psychological department at a university. I don't remember which one. He was also a neurosurgeon. And his contributions were about how the human mind works, and he theorized and I believe proved that our minds work holographically. That's how our thoughts arise, our feelings, and the images that go through our mind. But a quick thing on holographic theory. Leonard Susskind and Stephen Hawking got in a battle of words over a period of years, and it was called the Black Hole Wars. And basically Hawking said that everything out here in the real world is got information embedded in an energy field, and Susskind agreed with that, and I see it that way too. I've got more to say about that later. But when information, the differences in things in the outside world, like stars, planets, plants, animals, human beings, cars, whatever might fall in that black hole, it's all got information embedded in it, right? Makes sense. And the argument was, according to Hawking, information gets completely destroyed. And Susskind did not like that because of his studies and his co-theoreticists. Did I say that right? I have no idea. But so he disagreed with that. Thus came the Black Hole Wars, and Susskind and his cohorts basically won the argument that information like energy can never be destroyed. It might shift from one thing to the other, but it can't be destroyed. And so, to give you the cliff notes on what the holographic principle is, If you take the information in the outside world and it begins to fall into a black hole, what happens to that information? And if I have this correctly, what happens is that information gets stripped away from its embedded in its energy field, and that information gets distributed on the event horizon or the boundaries of that singularity. So for instance, we have a black hole in Sagittarius A at the very center of our galaxy right now as I speak, and it has stars orbiting it in a spiral configuration, and sometimes those stars and those planets fall into it. And I don't know for sure, but let's just say hypothetically that you've got trees, cars, and human beings on one of those planets. What happens to that information? It gets stripped out of the energy field and it gets distributed on that, let's say, beach ball or spherical geometry of that event horizon. And it's almost like a film, a holographic film that gets spread out over that event horizon, and then the energy has been converted into gravity and it continues to pass on through to the internal regions. Okay, so think about this. Energy and information in, energy gets placed on that spherical geometry. I'm going to call it a hard drive. Okay? And then the energy continues on through. And what happens on the inside? Well, I think I just talked about that in the last part one. And this isn't me making this up, you know, and this is not me being a purveyor of woo. This is cutting edge theoretical physics. And I honestly can say that I believe this to be true from my own observations, experiences, and comparing and contrasting various modes of thought and various schools of thought. And by the way, disclaimer, I'm not anywhere near a theoretical physicist. I'm just a guy that's getting through life, and I believe that the more I know, the more it helps me with existential things like old age and death and loss and pain and suffering. And I hope I can share some of that with you, you know. I hope that will do the same thing for you. So that's it in a nutshell. You basically, like in your movie theater, you sit there and you watch a beam of light in the old days pass through a reel of film and then get projected onto a flat screen, and then you see moving images dancing around that flat screen. Let's say Marilyn Monroe or whoever's the latest Hollywood starlet or star, you know, I don't know, I don't keep up with it. You know, the nature of reality is similar to that. You've got light energy with information embedded in it and gravity and entropy that hits that black hole, and then it turns into projector and births a new reality inside of itself. And in the process of doing that, because that information is spread on that sphere, you know, let's say ones and zeros is something to wrap our minds around. The more ones and zeros you put on that event horizon, the larger that thing gets. And bingo, you see, we're in an expanding universe. What is that expansion? I will use a word called consciousness. Now, I'm going to reference my notes here to see if I'm missing anything. Okay, so I got into that. I had mentioned geometry. I understand that geometry is also part of this process. The golden ratio, the geometry of the birth of the universe, white hole, black hole. Some people theorize that's like, they call it de Sitter space, but a simple way to maybe put that, and it may not be quite accurate, is it's like a donut or a toroid, if you're familiar with the word toroid. And so you have the donut, and you have things going into the black hole in the center of the donut, and then out the other side you have things getting ejected out, information and energy, and it circulates around that geometric shape. And I think that's a good mental placeholder to consider this. And I will reference a fourth guy, and his name was Itzhak Bentov, and he gets into this in a fun way with a few books that he wrote before his passing. And I believe that was early in the 1970s. So let me mention Leonard Susskind has some great videos that will explain holographic theory much better than I can, or I should say holographic principle much better than I can. Prebrum's great. David Bohm's got a lot to say. There's even a movie about the life of David Bohm that's interesting. Itzhak Bentov's books are wonderful. Very enlightening way to look at things. Interestingly enough, about geometry and toroids, if you'll think about it, the galaxies are typically in the shape of a toroidal donut. Think about that one. We're just not seeing one side of the donut. We're on the white hole side, but if we look at the center of this galaxy, we're on the black hole side. Inside, outside, right? Magnetic fields have a toroidal field around them, positive and negative pole. You'll notice that the sun has a positive and negative pole, and electromagnetic waves that radiate out from it. You'll notice that planet Earth has a magnetic field, north and south pole. And the human heart is a battery. It generates an electromagnetic field. So I'm not going to use words like aura and I don't know all the different words in woo land. They're interesting to think about, but there's no question that a human being has a toroidal energy field, and your heart generates that. And by the way, I'm geometry. I look just like a starfish when I stand up, spread my arms and my legs, right? There's your geometry. By the way, pi goes in this end, and then something else comes out the other end. Positive pole up here, negative pole down there, right? Did you ever look at it that way? Things go in and things go out. Okay, the next thing I've got written here is, seeds. Now behind me here, you'll see some lovely trees. And, I got something from the Buddhists that helped me to see things in a deep way. And one of my favorite teachers in the past or influence was a guy named Thich Nhat Hanh. And he had a beautiful way of describing reality from a Buddhist perspective. And here's what he did with it. He took paper, but I'm going to use I'm going to use a tree instead. You see these trees behind me? They started out as seeds from a mother or father tree. Not sure how that works. I'm not a horticulturist. But what is that tiny little acorn? What is that tiny little seed? It is stored information. It's RNA and it's DNA. It's biological code, by golly. And, it goes into the ground, it goes into earth, and then it sprouts, right? But what is this tree made out of? First thing we just discovered, it's made out of information passed on through generations. The tree gets dumped into Mother Earth, and what does it do? It begins to accumulate minerals as it sprouts and grows into a sapling. So it has the nature of earth in it, earth and minerals, okay? The root system of that little sapling is going to drink water. And that water goes through a system all the way back from rivers and tributaries and clouds back to the ocean, and in one grand loop. So the ocean water is in that tree. If you look at atmosphere, air atmosphere is in that tree. The darn things drink in carbon dioxide, which we all know we expel, and then the tree, through photosynthesis, see, I'm tripping over my tongue, it converts it into oxygen that we breathe. So there's a nice symbiotic relationship there. Thank heaven, huh? You know, don't want to cut down all these trees, create a cement jungle. There is also sunlight that these trees drink in, and they do so through a process of photosynthesis. Okay, so we have information, we have earth, we have air, we have fire, sunlight, and we talked about water. Okay, it's all in there in that tree. Amazing. The tree is also an atomic and molecular structure, and in my last video, part 1, I talked about the nature of atoms. They're a little divided piece of the universe. It's a pixel. And so this tree is a holographic field of energy that I have the gear to see it as sunlight bounces off of it through the apertures of my eyes. Okay, so eventually though, the seed goes through the cycle of life and begins to drop seeds. And then someday it will fall, and maybe we'll make firewood out of it and release the sunlight back out of it. If it stays in the ground long enough, it will turn to oil and concentrate, and millions of years, and then we'll burn it in an engine. And of course, we think that's going to destroy the planet. That may be a video for another day. I'm not here to trigger anybody politically on any side of any political aisle. So please don't get me wrong. But really, if you look at a tree, it's almost like this time tunnel, you know? It starts as a seed, sapling, sprouts out, has a field of molecular energy, and then eventually it goes back into the system that it arose out of in the first place. Okay. Moving on with my notes. Human being, more or less the same process. We have earth, air, fire, water, and though interestingly, we also have electricity and chemicals. Trees have chemicals. I'm not sure about the electricity. Maybe that's what photosynthesis is. But we have a nervous system, and we have neurons and axon pumps, and we have electricity surging through our system and going up to our brain stem and up into our brains. And we are creating a holographic reality within ourselves. It's called our thoughts, the images we see in our mind's eye, the energetic emotions that we experience. And so just like the universe or a black hole takes in information, gets distributed on a boundary, and then drives a holographic movie within itself, human beings do the same thing. See, I'm looking around right now and I'm drinking in lots of information through these two little black holes right here. You see them? They're called my pupils. Then through a process of retina and optic nerves and so on and so forth, somehow this dashboard of my mind and my hardware makes a holographic image within my mind. Okay. And so literally, because I'm a small hologram and a larger hologram, I have that pattern, right? Just like your galaxy out there, that little bubble in there at the center of the galaxy, it's pure condensed consciousness, in my humble opinion, right? It's like a brain sitting there, and it has an in and it has an out. See, we're configured that way too. We have a right hemisphere. Well, actually, it's over here, my other right. A right hemisphere and a left hemisphere. One is eros and holographic, and the other is more linear and logos or logic, and that's my left brain. And interestingly enough, the Warner-Brachy area in my brain is the language center, and language is about dissecting and labeling things. And that's how our thoughts kind of run linearly through life. But at night, interestingly enough, that part turns off, and Mom gets to come online, and she gets to dream in holographic images, right? Like dreams, figures, and dream stories. And that's a different type of language. So when you look at this toroidal donut, it's got left brain on one end of the donut, and it's got right brain on the other end. Itzhak Bentov's got a wonderful diagram of that. Didn't bring it, didn't want this to run too long. But just like the galaxy has a singularity in the center, I'm going to call that consciousness, and its body is a field of stars, which are energy structures, electromagnetic energy structures on a grander scale than my human body. I also have, strangely enough, a singularity or a consciousness in here, and things go into it through my 5 senses. And holographic imagery is produced inside my little noggin here. So here I am. Oh, and by the way, look at my t-shirt. Isn't that cool? There's a visual for you. So I will throw this in, and not to wax biblical, but this is just interesting. You could probably find this in Hindu scriptures and Buddhist scriptures too. But since I'm sitting here in the United States in a Judeo-Christian atheist society, I'll just throw out some Bible stuff here. Ezekiel's vision as he saw the throne of God and what was around that throne. He saw a type of angel. I forget the terminology. I don't think it was seraphim. Ophanim. I think it was Ophanim. And what he saw was wheels with eyes and wheels within wheels, and then 4 heads, right? They were very strange creatures. But I believe that is a shamanic type of vision or a prophetic type of vision. And what he was seeing or realizing in his little holographic mind was galaxies and solar systems, and those are wheels within wheels, okay? And the terminology angel defined is a being that serves God's will and is derived from God. So I like the word angel, but not the ones on the little statue with the wings and stuff. No, I'm talking about energetic structures like myself that serve life's purpose, but not to get all biblical here. I just wanted to throw that in as a point of interest. Okay. I will also say that a human lifespan, we come in, we live our lives, and then we go out. And it's called our event, I call it our event horizon or death. In the Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism, they call that particular sphere on the tree as Daath, D-A-A-T-H. It represents the singularity or the abyss or the black hole or the portal or the doorway from waking life into a higher realm. Death is the doorway. But I wanted to share this with you. If you play around with Einsteinian physics and time and gravity and the speed of light, time is a very strange thing. And I'll keep this short. As things fall into that black hole, they seem to fall faster, but as they reach that event horizon, time freezes down and stops, and that's how that information gets distributed right there. Time from the outside just stopped on that event horizon. And we are all heading towards, we came in, we're living our lives. Now we're going to go out, we're going to reach the event horizon of our lives. It's called death and the portal through that. And an interesting side note, you know, when you hear about people that have near-death experiences, quite often they see a tunnel, and on the other side of that tunnel they see a beautiful field of light and a beautiful place. And I actually have an experience of that personally. I had a little brother that passed away years ago, and it's a long story I will share for another time. But an acquaintance of his had a near-death experience and saw my little brother in that near-death vision or experience on the other side of that tunnel. So that was a wild story that dropped into my lap from my mother, talking to the mother of this individual that had this near-death experience. Just wanted to throw that in too. I'm trying to keep this interesting, man. If I'm a purveyor of woo, though, my apologies. Okay, moving on. So time is a pole too, right? My birth, my life, and my death. I'm going from one pole to the other. And you know, I look at it like bumper cars. You know, we're all tied into this field of energy, and we got the negative pole on the bottom of the bumper car, and we got that thing that goes up to the ceiling, or maybe your trolley, right? We're like little trolley cars, you know, choo-chooing through life like a bumper car. We're tied into the system, and it has negative and positive poles. Okay, so moving on. You know, we accumulate memories through a lifetime. So our waking mind is like a librarian, you know, we can only hold one or two thoughts at a time, you know, one or two, maybe one or two books, but we're accumulating this library over a lifetime, and we can't access it all at once, but those books keep getting put on the shelf one by one. And that's part of the purpose of being here, is to accumulate knowledge and experience for whatever comes next after this. And by the way, I'm past believing. I'm fully on board with knowing now. And I hope I can help you to get there too. You know, these world religions like Buddha and Krishna and Christ, you know, they're all trying to add verses into the storyline of this universe, and they all have wisdom to share. And if you look deep enough, you will find similarities between all three of them. And one of the biggest principles that they purvey is the principle of love. And if you think about that, you know, we are all connected together because this is one grand universe or uni-story, and we're all verses in it, and that means that we're all connected together. So love is a very important principle in this storyline, but it's not the only one. Maybe some videos to come, I'll share some thoughts. So the Bhagavad Gita has got beautiful scriptures and stories and mythologies, you know, right brain stuff, as does the Bible, as does maybe the sutras or the Diamond Sutra. All good things to explore. Next time around, I might dig into the nature of the human consciousness. Maybe I'll talk about soul and spirit, or psychological divisions or complexes or something like that. But I hope this one's been informative. I've enjoyed sitting here in the park and listening to myself talk. My wife is always telling me that I love to hear myself talk. So I hope you got something out of it too. You have a great day. Everybody stay safe, happy, and healthy.